Welcome back for another book talk video. Today it's Science Fiction Sunday, and that means I finally get to talk about a book I've been wanting to talk about for a long time, Scythe by Neal Shusterman. I absolutely love this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I've recommended it to so many people during the last few years, and they've all loved it. Everyone that I have talked to about this book has loved this book. The only criticism that I would see lodged at it really is it's a young adult book, and if you're not at all into young adult fiction, then maybe that would bother you. It does have the trope of having characters who assume names of famous people throughout history. Most of them are famous scientists or artists, and so if you have seen that overdone, so to speak, in young adult literature or something similar, then that might bother you a little bit. But I think in 2016 it was not overdone, and so I think it was a great way to add symbolism and add allusions into the story by having the characters take on those names. It's also really neat for a character to get to choose a name that symbolically represents that person, since they get to pick those names themselves. But here I am getting ahead of myself, so let's take a step back. First of all, Scythe Book 1 is part of a trilogy, and my plan is to talk about the first book today in this video, and then next week probably to talk about book 2 and 3 at the same time. But we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll start to talk about book 2 and go on and on and on for so long that I don't have time to talk about book 3. They're all great books, though book 1 is universally loved. And by the way, book 1 can stand on its own. You could read book 1 and be happy with book 1 as its own story. Book 2 is set up in the trilogy fashion of being the second book out of 3 and having a major cliffhanger at the end so that you come back for the rest of the trilogy. It also does that typical book 2 thing of introducing some new characters along the way. Book 3 is extremely bold and controversial, and that is where a lot of fans split. Some people thought Neal Shusterman went a little too bold with the science fiction in the third one, but I enjoy all 3 of them. So tune in again next week to hear more about the rest of the trilogy. In Scythe Book 1, Arc of the Scythe Book 1, Neal Shusterman sets up this amazing society. It's set in the far future, and to me it's really a dystopian book because it is talking about humanity setting up an artificial intelligence, AI, called the Thunderhead that runs society for us, and thus it's supposed to have made society as perfect as possible. And part of this is medical advancements to where when people die, they can easily be brought back to life. And that's a little creepy, but it's also really interesting to think about how that philosophically and psychologically alters society. And that's something that I love about Neal Shusterman in this book. This is the kind of science fiction that will make you think about futurism, about humanism, about where we are going as a species into the future, what artificial intelligence means, what those kind of body injury and death repairing machines, nanites, and technology could do to us. In fact, one of the characters in the story is someone who gets a thrill out of killing himself in a lot of different ways because he knows that he'll be brought back to life, and that's just weird to think about. The 2 main characters are teenagers, thus it's a young adult novel. And in this society, since people are brought back to life so easily, to avoid overpopulation, there is an organization set up called the Scythe, and they are responsible for supposedly randomly killing people. So you've got these 2 teenagers who are recruited, kind of against their will, to train to become Scythes, to be a part of the Scythedom. And the issue is, the man who takes them on has accepted 2 apprentices, and I suppose in that Star Wars Jedi Sith sort of way, the master is supposed to have 1 student at a time. Some people in the Scythedom organization take issue with him having 2 students at once. It becomes part of the drama and conflict of the story. But he's got 2 students who are apprentices who are vying for 1 position that's available to become a Scythe. Though you'll see as the story progresses that it evolves into a much more interesting situation. Oh, it's such a good book. There are twists and turns, surprises. I think that anybody, really, should enjoy this story. That's it for today's book talk. I probably talked long enough. Every day is a good day for a book talk. Peace.